start this off. I want you guys to multiply these two binomials together, please. So figure out what's the product of n plus 8 times n minus 8. Find out what's that product. So what method are you using this to find out what's the product? First? Mm-hmm. First, outside, inside, last. FOIL, or just a distributive property. So either one. So you're going to do n times negative 8, 8 times n, 8 times negative 8. And you should get that. And if any of you remember, just really a couple weeks ago, we had lesson 9-8, which was called special products. And this is a special product. So you could use FOIL, but how many of you use FOIL, by the way? Who used FOIL? Okay, didn't you get n squared minus 8n plus 8n minus 64? What happens to those two middle terms? They cancel out, and you're left with the first term and the last term of that product. So n squared minus 64. This right here is called a difference of squares. Now, why is it even called a difference of squares? This is the reason why. Or do you want to? No. Okay. The reason it's called a difference of squares, really, it's kind of deep, so pay attention. There's a difference, which means there's a subtraction problem going on. And then the word squares. Does anyone know what times itself is going to get me n squared? So what number times itself gives me n squared? N. What number times itself gets me 64? 8. So these two numbers are squares. And I'm going to justify that. Oh, actually I have it right here. The square root of 64 we said was 8. And the square root of n squared is n. So those two numbers, n squared and 64, are squares because they can be square rooted. And we're going to talk about that more in a couple chapters because we're going to deal with a lot of roots. Okay, how many of you are good with that? Like you can multiply it out. You get that. Our lesson today is not to multiply, though. What do you think it is? You're going to go from this to this. Okay, so how do we do that? Example 1. You're sorry? No, sorry. You're factoring special products. Square rooting it. No, not unsquaring it. Square rooting. And just a little review. What's the inverse of addition? Subtraction. What's the inverse of multiplication? Division. What's the inverse of squaring something? So putting something to the second power. Square rooting. And so they're inverse operations, and we're going to use that today. Okay, A. N squared minus 81. Before you work any of these problems, in fact, every other lesson before this, with chapter 10, before you start trying to factor it out, you must find the GCF. And if it's not 1, you need to factor it out. So here, between m squared and negative 81, is there a GCF greater than 1? Is there any other GCF? No. Now I can start factoring it. Is this a difference? Yes. Are these two able to be square rooted? Yes. It's a difference of squares problem, and this is how I work it out. What's the square, and I'm working vertically here. What's the square root of m squared? What number times itself gets me m squared? M. And I'm going to subtract the square root of 81. What number times itself gets me 81? 9. That's my first binomial. Does anyone know what my second binomial would be? Automatically. Josh? M plus 9. Once you get the first binomial, the second one is automatic. That's your answer. So you just factored a difference of squares. Now, just like with all the other problems, you can always check your answers. So can anyone tell me what's m times m? Okay, what's m times 9? 9m. What's negative 9 times m? Negative 9m. Those cancel out. What's negative 9 times positive 9? Negative 81. So does that work? Yes. And you can check it mentally, or you can actually work it out using FOIL. Okay, not too bad on that one. B. 100 s squared minus 25t squared. First question I must ask, does it have a GCF? That is not 1. Yeah, what's the GCF of, wait, what? Oh, doesn't 25 fit into both of these? So you're going to factor that out. What's going to be left on the first term? 4s squared. So 25 times 4s squared, 100s squared. That works. Minus t squared. This is not, well, wow, I almost caught myself there. Is this factored?
No.
Did I make it into a multiplication problem? Yes. Did I factor it completely? Because this right here can be factored even more. So you did factor it. Now it's a multiplication problem. But can I make this right here simpler? And the answer is, well, I don't know. Is it a difference of squares? Mm-hmm. So the square root of 4s squared is what? 2s. Because 2s times 2s is 4s squared. Minus the square root of t squared. T. Because t times t is t squared. That's my first binomial. What's the second binomial? 2s plus t. Is that my answer?
No.
What? Oh, sorry. Did I? Is that wrong, or what happened here? You got to remember that 25 you factored at the beginning. This is my answer right here. That 25 didn't just disappear. It's part of my factoring. Because if I only had the 2s minus t times the 2s plus t, I would come out with 4st minus 2t squared, 4s squared minus t squared, but I wouldn't come out to the original expression. So I need to make sure I do that. How's this going so far? Okay, more or less good. One more for this example. Oops. It's C, I think. And this one, oh, 1/9 x squared minus 4/25 y squared. What's the very first question I ask on any factoring problem? Is there a common factor? Is there a GCF that is not 1? What do you think? No. By the way, just a little hint. Please listen carefully. You do get fractions with common factors. This is not one of those. Hint, hint. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to find what's the square root of 1/9 x squared. I don't. Oh, isn't 1/3 times 1/3 1/9? So you can find the square root of 1/9. It's 1/3 x minus the square root of 4/25 y squared minus 2/5 good y. That's your first binomial. Give me the second one. Yeah, it's the same as the first one, except it's 1/3 x plus 2/5 y. And that is factored. You guys okay with that? How many of you are semi-okay to very good? Okay, good. Page 584. This is what you're going to do. You're going to do problems 7, 8, and 9. And when you're done with it, you can check with your neighbor. And the neighbor I want you to check it with is the person whose table is touching your table. Okay, so you're like, yeah. And if they're very close, we'll count it.
Oh, James and Kendall is not up there.
There you go. Look at that. And then you two will count. Swivel's in the way, I know. Okay, and then I'll have you three back there. You can check each other. Okay, go ahead. 7, 8, and 9 on page 584. Oh, I am so sorry about number 8. Thank you. Oh, I am so sorry about number 9. Actually, I'm so sorry about every one of them. Please forgive me. I'm just sorry about all of them. Yeah, that one too. 7, 8, 9. Sorry about all of them. You'll get over it though. And don't say anything other than to your neighbor that we specified here. Bless you. That's okay. And sorry, you got to factor them out. I think the instructions, I'm hearing you, Eli, say write if they can or cannot be, but you factor it out if it can. Don't ask me questions. Unless you want to know which ones they were. I can't answer specific ones, but you can ask your neighbor. Totally okay with that.
I can ask Katie.
Sorry?
I can ask Katie?
Yeah, you can.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can talk and maybe she'll give you some insight. So you have 2 helpers. Josh? No questions, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah, and I'll give you the answers at the end, but I can't give you any help. None. Don't ask me. Sorry. Because I want to see you guys handle it, and then maybe you'll get it, maybe not. We'll figure it out, though. Sorry, I can't. I'm sorry. I want you to ask your neighbors. You're allowed to talk to the person next to you. Hi, mister. Hi, miss. Okay, my first volunteer is going to give me the answer number 9. And I select... I like the eye contact I'm making with you guys. There's a lot you can say non-verbally. But number 7 is going to be James. What'd you get for that one, James? For your factored form.
E minus 7a times 7a.
Sorry.
Q. Wait, it's Q.
Yeah, not Q and P is... Sorry. One positive, one negative. How many of you got 7? P minus 7Q times P plus 7Q. And again, those binomials could have been switched. Okay, next volunteer is going to be Vivian.
This one is 5a minus 9b2, and then same thing except plus.
Okay, how many of you got? Whoa. I get the 5a. I get the plus and the negative. But 9, why b squared?
Because 2 times 2 is 4.
Yeah. The square root. The square root of b to the 4th is b to the 2nd. So b squared, b squared. That's correct. How many of you got that one? 8? Okay. Number 9 is going to be Ellie.
3x minus 4y times 3x plus 4y.
In the other class, same thing happened. That would have worked out really well if this were a negative sign. Is this a difference? Is it a difference of squares? So this answer would be prime. There's nothing else you can do to it.
Wait, you live.
What? And I couldn't answer that. So hopefully you.
You told me I was wrong.
Oh no, sorry. Because the instructions, I thought I heard you say something about the instructions. It just says state whether they can or cannot. So I said go beyond that. Sorry, Eli. I believe you. Okay, listen up carefully. Listen carefully. How many of you got 3x plus 4y, 3x minus 4y? It's easy to get that. If you use FOIL, though, you're actually going to get 9x squared. That works. You're going to get negative 16y squared, but you're also going to get negative 24xy. If you use FOIL, that's not what you had in the original expression. This is not a difference of squares. You can't do it the way we just did it.
Oh, that's true.
So be careful with that. Use FOIL to check it. On your quiz on Friday, all your problems can be checked. Every one of them on your factoring. Please, yeah, FOIL or any other multiplication. Yep.
So I did.
Sorry, 9?
Yes.
Okay.
I did. I did 3x minus 4y,
Mm-hmm.
and then times 3x minus
Oh.
4y.
FOIL it and tell me what you get. Yes, ma'am.
For number 8,
Mhm.
you know how we did for example 1 for B? Why can't we do like, you know how it was like 100 and they had like a...
Common factor? So do these have a common factor? So
I
you're...
didn't think that you could do that.
Oh, just because they don't have a common factor doesn't mean you can't go to the next step. So the first question you ask, does it have a common factor? And if it doesn't, then you try this out. What's 25a square rooted? It would have been 5a. And then the square root of 81b to the 4th would have been 9b squared. So you do that, and then plus. So if you can't factor the GCF, go to the next step. But you always have to do that first. Okay, I wish I could tell you that was it, but it's not.
Wait, what?
Oh. Example 2. A. It's really not that much more. It's really not that much more difficult if you understand your first step in all of these problems is to find the GCF. And if there is a GCF that is not one, you must factor it out. Looking at this problem, does it have a greatest common factor other than 1?
Yes.
What is it?
It's
5c. Okay, then in parentheses, you're going to be left with 4d squared, right? Because the c went away. Rewrite that. And then on the other term, 5c times what gives me negative 125c to the 5th? 25c to the 4th. And that's important because if you don't get that variable, the exponent correct, you can't factor it out anymore. How many of you are okay with the GCF coming out and you're being left with this? Let me ask this question that I asked earlier. Is this factored?
Yes.
Yes. Is it factored completely? No. So listen, this is factored, but we always want to factor it completely as far as we can. So looking at this expression in the parentheses, is that a difference of squares?
Yes.
So is it a difference? Mm-hmm. Are these two able to be square rooted? Let's see. What's the square root of 4d squared? 2d. What's the square root of 25c to the 4th? 5c to the 2nd. And they're being subtracted. That's one of your binomials. What's your second binomial?
2d plus 5c squared.
2d plus 5c squared. Is that my answer?
No.
What did I do wrong?
You forgot your
5C didn't go away. You still need that part right there. Okay? I'm a little bit worried because if you don't get how to do these problems and you're not even writing it down, how are you going to get it? So I see a lot of people just looking at me on the board, and that's part of what you're doing, but you got to be writing it because then you don't know what to do next time. So write it. Starting now. You did it? Okay. Did it? Okay. Yeah, well, and if you are faster, that's great, but make sure you're writing it down because sometimes I work out problems and I'm like, they either got the answer right or they didn't write it down, which is not good. So I'm trying to help you out. Sorry if I... Okay. Maybe I'm slow in seeing things. I don't know. B. 3k to the 4th minus 48. Oh, okay. Oh, man, no way. The square root of... no, it's close. It's 1.2.
Oh, no, it's not.
Oh, man. You see the headache you're going to avoid if you found that GCF? What's the GCF of those two? 3 goes into both of them. If you try to do it without it, you might be able to get to a certain point, but then you're going to be like, wait, isn't there something else I can do? Or I don't even know how to start this. What's left in parentheses? K to the 4th minus 16. All right, that's good. Great. Is this a difference of squares? Yes. So I'm going to factor this out even more. So I got my 3. I got my k squared minus 4. K squared plus 4. Do you guys remember how to do that? So I get the square root of, what's the square root of k to the 4th? K squared. What's the square root of 16? So I got the minus and the positive version. Did we factor it?
Yes.
No, we didn't.
No, we
Yes, we
didn't,
didn't.
because there are more squares.
Oh, wait.
That's a good catch. I'm triggered.
Is that a difference of squares?
Yes.
So is it factored? The answer would be yes, but is it completely factored? Triggered. Is this a difference of 2 squares?
Yes.
So you can factor it more. So I'm going to break this guy into k minus 2 times k plus 2 times, can I break that down?
No.
Wait, what?
Don't do it, Mr.
Oh, it's not a difference of squares. Oh, no.
That was a great catch, Hayes. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, good job, Hayes. That was not easy. Oh, no. Is it factored completely now?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any like that in our homework?
There might be, I think it's 1 or 2. So not all of them. Yes, yeah. So you'll get partial. If you got this answer, you will get points. But then I'll circle this and say, or I'll just circle it and you'll be like, why? Why do you? Oh, I can break that down more. Yep. Go ahead.
Why can't? Oh, never mind.
Yeah, it's the difference part. This is not a difference. Okay.
Hey, Mr. Can you explain that again? Why can't you do
Which one? K squared minus 4 again?
What if we did k squared plus 4 into k squared minus negative 4?
Okay. That is, yeah. Thank you, Hayes.
2 negative squares. That's just
Yeah, and actually, if you get, let's say, the square root of negative 4, what's that?
2 negative.
No.
I times
Close.
4i.
It's 2i.
What?
This is not a real number. I don't know what it is. You will not deal with this chapter.
This
Wait,
chapter?
wait a minute.
What? It's an imaginary number.
Oh, wait, I wasn't supposed to say that. That was my...
Or year.
You know, I was...
You have the negative.
Hayes and everyone, when you get old, the days and years just blend together. Okay, your homework tonight. Oh, sorry. Time out. If you could do this last problem, you should be okay. Page 584, number 17.
To do this problem, we don't have to do homework.
No, not C, because C is a trial and error, which we can work on that in Algebra too, but that's, yeah.
That's like 2 years from now.
Yeah. I know, you gotta wait.
2. Because you take geometry next year. My dad did that.
Okay, so you're trying to factor out 17. Do it completely, and always ask that first question, because if you don't, this problem is very hard to do, if not impossible. Bless you. So is there a GCF? Yeah. So factor that out. Then what's left in parentheses may or may not be factorable. All right, check with your neighbor. And, time out. This is what I did. Oh, man, I almost missed this out. I forgot to say, 5 of you will be randomly selected, randomly. If 3 or more get it correct, that is a good thing for the class. If fewer than 3 get it right, that is not so good of a thing for the class. Oh, hold on. Good and bad, yeah, it depends on whose perspective. How about that?
Yeah, whose perspective?
Yeah, we'll find out. Go ahead. No pressure. You will be randomly selected.
I know. So make sure
You can check with your neighbor.
Hey, can I check my neighbor?
You may.
why not?
I'll give you time. Check. Look. What did you get? No, I didn't get that. Uh-oh.
Alright, time's up.
Once I select the people, you are not allowed to communicate at all. We talked about nonverbal communication. I mean no communication. Okay, the 5 people that are selected. Kyra.
I can see your eyeball.
I can't see my eyeball. Okay. Kendall, Lizzie, Taylor, and one more. Eeny, meeny, miny, Wyatt. Okay. Somebody who was not selected, give me the answer. If you raise your hand. So whoever was not selected has a chance. Beth, go ahead.
The answer?
Yep.
5 times 2 and minus 3 and then times 2 and plus 3.
Okay, that's the answer. Out of those 5, raise your hand if you got it right.
I was in the process of getting that.
Gotcha. But Kyra, thankfully, 4 out of 5 got it. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. Okay. Your homework is slightly changed.
Really?
Are you serious?
Yeah. There you go.
Yay.
Thank those people later. I don't know how many times in my career teaching math have people clapped at the homework, but I'm thankful for that. It's a special moment. Bye.